Hey, Katie, nice to see you. So let me first welcome Dr. Sylvia Isler to our College of Engineering and the Ramp to Success Speaker Series. Thank you, Sylvia, for connecting back. I think we saw you here in person right back in 2003.
Yeah.
Uh, that was when Sylvia received the Francis Cabot Young Alumni Award from our university. So that has been 17 years, and I think it doesn't feel like it. So it's good to see you again, and hopefully it won't be another 17 years before, we see you next.
Yeah, likewise, and I hope not.
Right. So today, the topic roughly that we felt would be good to discuss based on your experience is we titled it Career Pathways. And so we hope to hear from you your own unique experience having served in various technical leadership positions throughout your career. So how we're going to do this is we're going to have you, say a few words first, and following that, two of our students are going to moderate the discussion. So we solicited a number of questions from our students, and they submitted them, and we kind of broke them up into three themes. So I have two students here who volunteered to serve as moderators. Let me introduce them and then hand it over to you, Sylvia. The first up, one of the students who's going to be moderating is Alana Smith. Alana is right here.
Hey,
She
Alana.
is a, excuse me, she is a sophomore in mechanical engineering and also a member of our RAMP community since 2019. And you've met Ariel, will be our second moderator. She's a graduate student in electrical engineering. She also obtained her undergraduate degree here in EE last year. She's currently completing her master's thesis work and is soon going to be starting her PhD work. We don't know where, but some institutions she's still deciding on.
Ah,
She's,
nice.
yeah, she's also a recipient of the GEM Fellowship for her upcoming PhD work. So they will start after, you would like you to start first, Sylvia, and start off our discussion.
Sure. So I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about my career path and touching on a few themes. So I want to talk about the theme and then give you an example of how that theme was applicable, in retrospect was applicable. So first of all, um, you know, be open to new opportunities. So when I graduated UMass Lowell, I moved out to Seattle to work as a research scientist in a company called MathSoft, and there was a software development arm and there was a research arm, and in my mind, I wanted to be in the research arm because I wanted to work on grants. I wanted to work on medical imaging. That was my thing, and that's what I did for about a year. But the other part of the company developed a programming language called S. How many people have heard of R? Yeah. So weirdly, S is the precursor to R, and we would get the S technology from Bell Labs, productize it, and turn it into S plus. But that was something over there. That's product development. I didn't want to do it, and but the team was in need of a developer to work on the newer version of S and just get a look at it and start productizing it. And so I got tapped on the shoulder and asked to take a look at it, and I was like, okay. And that became kind of the fork in the road where I sort of left research behind and became a professional software engineer. And 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 that's been the direction of my career ever since. So I think being willing to give up your um, planned trajectory for a good opportunity, an opportunity to learn, is something that I've done again and again, and I recommend that you do that as well. Um, Another thing is sort of on the leadership path. I I got out of my comfort zone as well. So in 2000, or 1999, I think, I moved back to New York to work at a startup. And the startup was focused on, um, in our minds, we were disrupting the energy derivatives market, right? So Goldman and JP Morgan Sachs were manipulating the market for derivatives. And so the little guy, and gal who maybe run a small trucking company or a small airline would be at the whim of these big companies when it came to leveraging the markets to hedge their energy consumption risk. And so our idea was we will use independent pricing. We'll deploy an ASP, which is basically a cloud, what we call a cloud service today, that will allow people to manage their energy portfolios online. And so I was the first developer at this company, worked for the directly for the CTO. Um, Gradually, the company got bigger and bigger, and I ended up in my first kind of leadership position as VP of engineering. Um, and by again getting out of my comfort zone, and my my comfort zone is sitting at a desk coding, making things work. That's my comfort zone, right? And even today, that's my happy place. However, getting out of your comfort zone to lead, to mentor others, to drive the company towards its goals, to help manage the careers of other people, really opened my eyes to how fun it can be to lead. Because when you're sitting at your desk coding, there's only so much work you can do. However, if you kind of generate ideas and kind of bequeath them to to others, kind of like very much like what uh, Dr. Chandra, Dr. Thompson do, that's a very rewarding form of leadership. Because as engineers, most of us will have way more ideas than we can ever have time to implement. And so kind of that moment of getting out of my comfort zone and taking an opportunity to lead, um, again, was a hallmark of my career. Now I'm going to um, say something counter to that, which is that I've also done, which is I never stop learning. And so there have been times where it's a very normal career trajectory to say at age 30-ish, when I became VP of engineering at Kydex, to never look back and be take on leadership position after leadership position, sit on boards, and 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 don't look back. But that is that as engineers, you you never get you never get tired of creating. And so there are times where I've gone back to be an individual contributor. So when I left JP Morgan Chase, I went to a little company called System Management Arts that was focused on root cause analysis in networks. And they had this really uh, cool statistical model for isolating network problems, and I wanted to be a part of that. Um, I'll tell you a little bit about what we were doing at JP Morgan Chase that kind of drove me to do that, which, so we at JP Morgan Chase, my group was managing the counterparty risk for the bank. And one of the things that we were working on is we're working with quants um, to make it possible to bundle up a bunch of mortgages and credit default swaps and present them to regulating agencies as as AAA in quality, regardless of what was inside. and we were kind of so my team was setting up the computational capabilities, running the algorithms, and so of course that act I didn't it didn't seem right to me, but I'm not saying that I predicted the financial crisis of 2000 of 2008, but it didn't sit right with me. So I said I want to build something real. I don't want to um, um, bundle derivatives of real things together. I want to get back to building, and so I I didn't know I knew a bit about networks, but nothing about ATM networks, MPLS networks, and I just wanted to go in cold and just learn something. And so that was an opportunity, and that's where I met the um, some lifelong friends, lifelong colleagues that I've worked with in more than one company. Um, so those kind of three principles, being open to new opportunities, getting yourself out of your comfort zone, and continuing to learn are are things um, that principles that I've tried to run my career by. And the most important thing is um, help people along the way. So when in each of those principles, take opportunity to mentor other people. They don't even necessarily have to be younger than you or less experienced than you, but there's always some information sharing that you can do with other people, and that makes the journey much more worthwhile. So that's my spiel. Um, happy
So,
to answer questions.
so complacency is not in your vocabulary, right?
Right, right,
Right.
yeah, absolutely.
That's certainly a very adventurous model, I think, which kind of sets you apart from a lot of professionals who go into a particular area and kind of, live in that space and grow. So I think there are questions related to this on how you do these kind of things in the questions we have. So I'm gonna hand it over to Alana to start our discussion.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chandra, and thank you, Dr. Isler. So as Dr. Chandra mentioned, we have compiled some questions from students
Great.
around a few themes, and we're interested to hear what you have to say about them. So the first theme that we would like to discuss is how you've managed your career pathway and made decisions on how to move forward. So as we've heard, you had a number of interesting, very, very interesting jobs in your career that seem to be both technical and managerial. So our first question is, could you speak about your current work at Google and what your responsibilities are?
Yes. So my team at Google is focused on modernizing the Android platform build system. And so the group that I work in produces a tool called Basil, and it's 90% identical to the same build tool that we use inside Google, that runs at scale, and that allows tens of thousands of developers to build their code, and ship their code every day. And so we want to bring that kind of rigor and regularity to the Android ecosystem, which, believe it or not, still uses Make for most of for most of the platform build. So if you've got Android running on your phone, it was built with Make today, and we want to make that better. So that's what my team is all about. Secondly, so that's one part of my team. Another part of my team is working on um, software supply chain security, and what I mean by that is, if you heard about the SolarWinds hack last year, um, that was made possible because certain artifacts and build systems were not sort of locked down signed correctly. So each application or artifact has its own hash or identity that can be given to it or inferred, and that should be immutable. Um, and so we were not hit by the SolarWinds hack, but we also know that we want to improve our software supply chain security. So my team is building the signing service for Google. It may make it out into the outside world at some point, but that's what we are. That's what we've just started. We've just kicked off an initiative to do that this year.
Are you back in your technical space now, or are you doing both um, administration, management, as well as technical?
I'm doing both because one of the things that is a little weird for me in my last two roles is that I didn't grow up with the team. I didn't sort of land as an engineer, um, know the system, the architecture inside and out, and then end up leading the team. So I kind of helicoptered in, and so I feel without knowing something of the technology, I feel less than sure-footed, and so I try to find ways to work on aspects of my team's work that is not in the critical path, like low priority bugs, kind of advanced work that won't be needed for a very long time, just in case I get sucked into a management vortex and don't come out for a few weeks.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a mix for now. But I should say that managers at Google are are interviewed as if they're going to be software engineers. So the interview process is at least as rigorous as it is for individual contributors, because they want you to be able to code, they want you to be able to do system design, and they also want you to have um, the softer skills necessary to manage folks.
Good to know.
Thank you very much. For our next question, we have, what motivated you to transition from one company to the next? So you started your career at MathSoft in Boston, and then you went on to another technology sector.
Mhm. Yes. So it's a really good question. So it's a combination of personal and professional and 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 economic conditions and decisions. So when I left MathSoft and came back to New York, I had been there for almost 5 years, been in Seattle for almost 5 years. I missed my family. My sister was living in New York at the time, and uh, I I just wanted to come home. And so and coincidentally, a, a friend of a friend, ex Goldman Sachs, was starting a startup, and I I interviewed there, and flew in, interviewed. Um, you know, Friends and family were saying, "Look around, take your time." So I interviewed. I went back to the hotel. By the time I got back to the hotel, an offer was faxed to me. This is how long ago this was, and so I just pounced. I just took it, um, and um, and so I'm not advocating that you make decisions that way, but that's what I did. And then uh, when when I went from Kydex to JP Morgan Chase, we were in an economic downturn. It was kind of the post 9/11 recession and downturn. I was trying to get a position as an engineer, but to be honest, I'd gotten rusty. I'd led this team, and I was rusty. And so the position that I took a leadership position at JP Morgan Chase, and that I always knew was going to be a bridge while I figured out what I wanted to do. But I knew that I did not want to become rusty again. And so, I think in the back of my mind, I always wanted to get back to working on technology and our infrastructure, and that's how I ended up at at System Management Arts. Then um, System Management Arts got acquired, which is great. Everybody loves to be acquired. Um, but sometimes companies are acquired and it's kind of a mismatch. So EMC, storage company, Boston-based storage company, thought they needed a root cause analysis uh, engine. It turns out not so much. So they couldn't figure out what to do with us, right? And this was, and if you look at EMC now, I think it's still the case that EMC, not unlike Cisco, gobbles up quite a lot of companies, and so we just were kind of swept up in that wave at the time, and so we became a big company. I think I had like six managers in 6 quarters, and I did not, and I was bumping up against the glass ceiling. I felt I didn't think that I could get promoted into even a technical leadership position, and so I started looking around. Um, I I didn't see a good way to affect change in that regard at that time, at least, and so I then worked at a small fintech company directly for the CTO. We worked on some really interesting projects, which I could spend an hour talking about all by itself. But that CTO became one of the kind of the biggest influences in the way that I build software, manage people. Um, it was it was a kind of it worked out to be a good decision. So there are a variety of reasons why I've moved, and I think just being flexible, being open to new things, being willing to take risks, um, and and believing in yourself in order to take those risks, I think is important.
Yeah. A quick question there. You mentioned that you didn't think you were hitting the glass ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I think the young people here would kind of be interested in hearing, how do you recognize that? I mean, does it come from experience? Does it come from an organizational culture that you feel is kind of counter to where you want to go? So, what are the instincts and how do you build that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. In the case of EMC, I noticed a few things, and I'm not saying all of EMC is like this, but just in terms of what I noticed, so we were trying to integrate our software with some storage control systems, and we would go up to Hopkinton frequently, and all of the teams were organized by ethnicity. They're not seriously. There were a group of Russians working on an aspect. There were a group of folks from India working on another aspect of the project. There were British people working on another aspect of the project, and there was nobody that there wasn't a team of women, and there wasn't a team of underrepresented minorities. So and furthermore, I didn't see any impetus um, uh, to make that change. And then when it hit me was, so the head of HR, or one of the HR leaders was talking to us about diversity, and she spoke about diversity as diversity of opinion, diversity of view. And so and I was like, okay, if taking the fact pattern, I said, this may not be a place where I can rise. And then I saw folks that I felt that I was on par with, getting promoted around me, and the promotion process was a bit opaque, and I wasn't sure of the playing field or what the rules were. So I said, I need to get back to a small company. That is what I that so that's those were the signs that I saw.
Thank you. That's good that you were able to recognize those problems and then you were able to remove yourself from that situation and find a better job for you. So our next question is kind of going off this about like things that you didn't feel prepared for in your career
Mhm.
and how you were able to overcome those challenges.
So yeah, so one of the things I alluded to before is managing people whose job I hadn't done before, right? And so for example, at City Block Health, I um, I was um, overseeing information security. Didn't know a lot about information security at the time. Um, I was overseeing IT. Like 20 years ago, I built my own like tower computer, but that's not IT. IT is much more than that, especially in a healthcare company. So I had a lot of reading, asking questions. It's not like I wanted to go to our clinics and wire cables. That wasn't going to be feasible or recommended. But I had to kind of understand their walk, how one grows their a career in those areas, without walking in their shoes. And I think that is, and as you progress and lead heterogeneous teams, that's kind of what you had to do. And I never realized that before. And so that was the toughest part. Managing in a pandemic is another thing that I totally unprepared for, because the lockdown and isolation is different for different people. So for example, my team definitely more productive, um, but by sort of 80-20, but that 20% um, are people that love to be around other people, that miss the social interactions. I'm a I'm an extreme introvert. So trying to put myself in their shoes, it has been an education for me, and trying to um, make opportunities for us to socialize as a team, has been really an education for me and an education for them as well.
Thank you very much. And now I'm going to hand it over to Ariel.
All right.
Thank you so much, Alana. Sylvia, it's been really great chatting with you and working with you to organize the talk. So, continuing on with what Alana asked, I have a few more questions from students, and a lot of the students here today are undergrads. Um,
Great.
so, the theme of the following questions are how your undergraduate and graduate career prepared you for your career, and also how you continue to educate yourself. I know that you alluded to like one of your three, I guess, qualities that you mentioned was always being willing to learn. So it'll be interesting to hear more about how you've continued that. Um,
Absolutely.
thank you. So the first question is that as you think about it, what were your key takeaways from your undergraduate and graduate years?
It's a good question. So actually, when I started off as an undergrad, um, in um, as an architecture major, like a go build buildings and parking garages architecture major, and so I but architecture. But meanwhile, as a child, my dad was a physicist. I would go to the lab with him, fiddle around with computers, um, got some help, learned Fortran, uh, and started working in school breaks as a programmer at Harry Diamond Labs in Maryland, and which is an applied physics lab, and so but I was hell bent on being an architect, but architecture is a super expensive major, and so at some point I just I my turning point was so we were studying indigenous homes, and I went to Hampton University undergrad, and it's right on the water. I had no money to buy materials to build my model of an indigenous home, so I went and I found some bamboo and sticks, and I built this model of some structure. I can't remember the name, and and was almost laughed out of the studio. And I didn't have the resilience that I have now. And so that made me think, like, what's third year going to be like? What's fourth year going to be like? So I started to rethink my career, because with computer science, you I just needed the lab, I needed some books, and that was it. But it turned out to be a good decision, because I had some aptitude there, a lot to learn, a ton to learn, but I had some aptitude. I think uh, grad school another turning point. I think when I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to go to grad school, and so I had some choices as to where to go. Um, and there was a professor at University of Arizona, um, Greg Nielsen, who I had corresponded with, and he's like, I don't think you should go to University of Pennsylvania. The leap from I can help get you to where you need to go if you come study with me. I didn't listen. I wanted to go to Penn. Penn was hard. It kicked my butt. And then Charles swooped in and rescued me. And that's how I ended up at at UMass Lowell in his lab. And so I these are kind of serendipitous occurrences, and I'm not sure what lessons to draw from them. I'm so glad you brought this up, because I haven't thought about this in so long. But I think, you know, you know, if I were to distill it, it's recognize, you know, what your what your be honest with yourself about what your capabilities are, and and if somebody's extending themselves to offer a hand and help, take that hand. I didn't do it the first time when I was talking with Greg Nielsen, but I did it the second time when Charles swooped down to Penn and and had me come up to the lab at Lowell. So that's my on the fly distillation of that lesson.
Oh, thank you so much. It's really great to hear your perspective. Um, So continuing on that, so a lot of our students were interested in knowing more about, how one moves into a leadership role. You did discuss this,
Mhm.
but specifically, do you think that getting a PhD was important for your transition into these roles and influenced your trajectory to positions like VP in your former jobs, or were there other skills that you acquired that were helpful?
Yeah, I think it was. I think that um, for a few reasons. Uh, First, the the doctorates open doors, especially for so superficially, doctorates open doors for women, people of color. That's the superficial side, because once you are um, in an interview or hired, you still have to sort of stand and deliver. And what you draw on from the journey, as opposed to the degree and the label, are in grad school and in school itself, you learn how to learn. You learn discipline. Um, you learn what you're interested in, um, and hopefully you acquire curiosity about things that 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 you don't know about. And so I to this day I love hiring PhDs because they I can throw them into ambiguous situations, difficult problems, and more than likely they will find a way to solve those problems. And many times they they will be novel methodologies. So um, the the I think particularly my favorite degree uh, of folks that I've hired is mechanical engineering, actually, because you have to learn many disciplines in order to be. You need to know math, you need to know physics, you need to know uh, electric electrical engineering principles, um, and you're just solving problems with a lot of domain knowledge. And computer science, great discipline, but it's buttressed by math, but not necessarily by the tools that you need to physically model the world. And that's super important. I don't know if I meant. I think I'm rambling. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
Sylvia, you're breaking the heart of double E's here.
Oh, yeah, double E's have a special. Also have a special place as well, for sure.
And actually, to that point, a lot of students say, I'm going to come back and get a PhD. I want to go to industry and get some experience first. So what's your thought on that? I mean, do you feel that you would have come back and gotten a PhD after you got into a company, or what would you recommend to the students here?
I would say if you want a PhD, stay and get a PhD. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, um, the especially in engineering, the things that you need to do to get a PhD are very similar to the things that you need to do to have a sustainable career in technology. So more than likely, your doctorate's going to be funded by a grant. You need to be able to meet some set some objectives, meet them, make presentations, write well, defend your ideas, and it's good to be able to defend your ideas in a in a in a place where your livelihood is not going to depend on it necessarily, right? You can make mistakes, and so I I I would wholeheartedly recommend, especially now that there's a more and more of a confluence between engineering, industry-funded engineering research, and and so uh, so it's not one or the other. They're very similar these days, but I think that learning kind of rigorous thinking along with the kind of the trappings of industry that I mentioned, like presentation, defending your ideas, et cetera, are super important. So that's one person's opinion, but and I have to say, when I was a kid, my dad was working, got his master's before I was born, and when I was a kid, he went back and got his doctorate, and it was hard. It was really hard. Just I could feel that it was hard. I didn't know what he was doing, but it looked hard to me, because he was working at the same, supporting a family, getting um, along with my mom, and getting his doctorate. It's super hard. So you built up a head of steam. You're here. If you have the ambition to get a doctorate, just stay and get the doctorate. That's my advice.
Thank you. Yeah, that's also one of the reasons why I just thought it's a good idea just to go straight through it's exciting too, learning new things. So yeah, thank you for your answer. So to segue into, I guess some of your organizational work. So you've been to a lot of places. So what qualities do you think were most important to your success?
Um, that's a good question. I think, you know, um, first of all, hard work, um, but not so hard that you sacrifice your personal well-being. There was a time when I was working on S and S plus that I was practically living in the office because I felt I think I felt like I had something to prove. And then my manager um, said you're gonna burn yourself out. And he told me this very depressing story about a colleague of his that had burnt out. They didn't harm themselves or anything, but that it's a very dark place to go. And so work hard, but also take care of yourself. Uh, listen to others, collaborate, um, and most importantly, look for hard or unsolved problems. Look around you for big problems, small problems that are unsolved, and solve them without anybody asking you to. And um, and and hopefully recognize if you're in a company that supports that type of initiative, and kind of don't lose that spirit of looking for problems to solve.
Thank you. So we'll be moving into our next theme.
All right.
Um, so this theme falls into, support systems that you can reflect on that were pretty important in your early days in school and later on in the companies you were at. So you did mention the CTO you worked under at the fintech company, your dad who is a physicist. So I was wondering who or what made an impact on your life choices?
So I'd say of course, my parents, big, hard charging education zealots, which I don't, I don't like, you know, if I brought home too many B's, that was a problem when I was when I was a kid. So, um, so that that kind of they set the expectations, super high expectations. The and every just about every kind of professor or leader that I've worked with and for, I I I take I've learned something from. Um and I think that and that's really important to um to kind of take a step back periodically and say, what am I giving to this situation and what am I getting out of this situation in terms of what you're helping others with and what you're taking away in terms of learnings. Um, the this the the CTO that I worked for, Jean, was doing microservices before we were, they were sort of small distributed systems, and he was building microservices before that became a thing. So it kind of revamped um, the entire way that I look at building software and building manageable, sustainable systems. Um, Way ahead of his time in a lot of ways. Um, and and so I think that it's important to kind of collect mentors, right? And it doesn't have to necessarily be somebody that's more experienced than you or older than you, because it's a small world, right? And life is long, but it's also short. And so the CTO that I worked for at Kayadex, um, now works for me at Google. So so it's just you just never know, right? Um, and so I think it's important um, to to always leave your door open. Um, that's why I'm so thrilled to hear from you, Ariel, being from UMass. There was no way I was going to say no to to uh, to to talking to you guys today. So those kind of, again, I think I may be rambling, but I think but but I can take something away from just about every experience that I've had, something positive.
Yeah. Ariel, so we're 6:48. I think you're almost ready to wrap up, right? So then we have time for some questions.
Sure. I can ask one more question.
Yeah, go ahead. No, finish up your thing. I just wanted to let you know it's 6:49. So
All right. Thank you. Okay, so we have a few more questions. So, is there any advice that you have for young women that want to pursue leadership positions in technology companies?
Mhm.
And is there a certain profile that you've seen that is helpful when acquiring these high tech positions?
So I have to say there's no one profile except for the ability, the desire to 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 be there, and some base level knowledge in the field. So I'll give you an example. So when we're interviewing for folks to be hired at Google, I don't care necessarily what languages they know. I want people that can solve problems and ask good questions, and if presented a problem, ask clarifying questions. Those types of things. So um, I think, you know, as women, it's also the case that we are more likely to pursue a position when we have all of the characteristics in the job description and then some, whereas men will, they have 50-60%, they'll go for it. So I think, I'm not saying to apply for jobs that you feel that you're unqualified for, but um, but take some risks. Um, Similarly, at Google, you don't get promoted unless you put yourself up for promotion, and women often don't put themselves up for promotion until it's so obvious that they need to be promoted. And so um, be assertively advocate for yourself, and and form relationships across organizations, maintain your relationships at technical relationships through organizations and things like that, so you have kind of sounding board, folks to motivate you and push you, and in addition to pushing yourself.
Thank you for that. Um, and our last question is, can you touch on uh, a little bit more about race and gender diversity and how some of the organizations you've worked at have been addressing them? I know there was that, I can't remember the name of the place, but all those people were, ethnicities were working on a certain project.
Yes.
Hopefully it's gotten better.
Mm. Yeah, so Google is a big company, let me say, and it um, it is, started in the Bay Area, not a not a terribly representative place for hiring underrepresented groups. And I think that over time, the company has made an effort with the location in New York. We're just starting a location in Atlanta, another location in Atlanta, I should say. We're building opening up a location in Raleigh. Um, I think that we are uh, putting ourselves and offices in locations that look a lot more like America. And I think that there's diversity in hiring. setting hiring goals for underrepresented groups. But the hard problem and kind of the unspoken about problem is how to retain those people. How to let them know, and everybody know, that there's a growth path, that their career, that they have that your manager at Google is going to be a partner in your career. And so I think, to that end, I think that making sure that everybody on your team has a as a career growth path, even if that growth path is going to land them outside of Google. So I have somebody that works for me that wants to run their own company. I'm all for that, because while they're here, I want them to be, happy, motivated, excited about what they're doing. But I also want to give them opportunities to give talks, to go to conferences, to meet like-minded people, so that when they feel they're ready, we'll still have a bridge, and they will have left some good work behind at Google, but they'll also be prepared for the next move. So I think the inclusion aspect of diversity and inclusion is the most interesting problem to me. I think, if so, in my last position at City Block Health, I was reporting to the head of the company, and he said, I want the team to be 50% women. I want the team to be 20% underrepresented minorities. And as a member of those groups, I was like, how am I going to do that? But I did it because I was incentivized and asked to do it. I mean, that was one of my key objectives, and so I think that it's an easy thing to achieve if executives and hiring managers are incentivized properly to hire plenty of minorities and women, but keeping them and doing the things to keep and grow them is what I'm committed to at Google, and Google is becoming more and more committed to the same.
So thank you for that. That was our last question. So we'll be opening up the questions from the audience, but I do want to say that your answers have been super insightful, and it's been really great hearing about your perspective and your journey through tech. Thank you for your openness and your honesty. It was very enlightening.
Pleasure. It's been great talking to everybody, and would love to take some off the cuff questions.
All right, you all come on.
Hello, Sylvia. This is Charles Thompson. How are you?
Hey, Charles.
Well, I'm proud of what you've done, and
Thank you.
we didn't know we're going to end up this way.
Yeah.
But anyway, well, when you were a student, I remember at AT&T, they said that this woman is highly opinionated, and it'll be very difficult for her to be successful. But I assume that you showed that that's not correct. And but I do think there's a stubbornness you had that allowed you to prevail. I mean, the other thing is I noticed that you started to talk like your dad.
You're right. Actually, sometimes I look in the mirror and I'm like, "What? That's my dad."
You started to talk like your dad, and if you said that you were going to hire mechanical engineers, I'm sure he would be very happy about that. Because all he commented about, I remember when he commented about your research work, he said, well, it has like real stuff in it. It has like physical things in it. So I think that aspect is actually very interesting, if you could see that. Well, that's all I had to say. But we have a number of CRP alumni giving talks. It's payback. we just had Maria Gomez, another CRFP person,
Oh, that's
who's
great.
at Mount Holyoke. So we'll have another one from where? Amazon,
Oh,
a
oh,
computer
wow,
scientist
that's good.
as well. But anyway, well, you did, I'm very proud of what you accomplished, and I'm sure that the decisions you made, I've been tracking it. I've been tracking the jobs over the years.
Oh, wow.
And I'm glad that you found the choices you made rewarding to you personally.
Thank you,
All right,
Charles. Thank you.
that's my 2 cents. Okay.
It's good to see you.
There's a question on chat. Shreya, do you want to ask your question?
Oh, yes. So interesting. So Google. So your question is about math and computer science and opportunities at Google for focusing on math and computer science. So if you so machine learning is 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 nothing but math, and you know, statistical methods in particular, you know, quite a bit of linear algebra. Um, that's if you have those fundamentals and know how to use them to solve interesting problems or curious about solving interesting problems, there is there's a place for you in a lot of companies and universities, including Google. So so absolutely, I think I I think that having it, so computer science degree is great if you know how to model and build something, right? If you don't have that underpinning, and that's kind of what I was alluding to when I was saying that I was a fan of certain degrees, is that you with the math, if you know how to model something, you can express it in code. Expressing it in code is kind of the last mile, but the fundamental knowledge you have in mathematics is what's going to really help solve real world problems and carry you far.
Do we have any other questions from the audience?
So Sylvia, oh, sorry, Catherine, go first.
You can go ahead, it's okay.
No, you go first, please.
Okay, I was just wondering, Sylvia, first of all, it's been wonderful talking to you and hearing everything you have to say. It's been just so amazing to hear your story. But I was wondering, when you're considering, switching companies or working with people or hiring new people, or basically just kind of changing teams, when you're looking for a new team or a new group of people to work with, what do you look for, and what are deal breakers for you when you're kind of looking at potential people to bring into your team to work with?
So I guess first and foremost, do I think that they have the tools to do the job? Are they curious? Are they collaborative as well? But if I have become a bit of a specialist in managing difficult people, so I don't mind managing difficult people. So I think that makes it interesting for me, as long as it's not detrimental to the team. So I think, first and foremost, are they interested in what we're doing? Are they passionate about what we're doing? And it's less about whether they'll fit in as opposed to whether they can do the work, and whether they will enjoy doing that work and grow, and can I grow them? Is there a kernel there that I can help grow them as well?
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Sally?
Sally?
Well, I want to make sure everyone else has asked their questions before I say what I'm going to say.
Go ahead.
Well, Sylvia, I wanted to say thank you so much for being involved tonight.
Oh,
and I would like to send you a little gift on behalf of the university.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So please give Kavita your address so I can make sure I've got the right address for you.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Sally. Appreciate it. It was my pleasure. This was fun, I have to say.
All right, 703. Anybody else got anything to ask Dr. Isler?
Hi, Doctor. I don't really have any questions. I just want to say thank you again for hearing your experience in your industry and field. Sounds like you definitely made some remarkable advances. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Shadrach. Appreciate it.
Have you thought of coming back to the university to maybe do a stint in teaching?
I wouldn't mind. I think, yeah, I don't rule anything out, as you know, so
Yeah, that's why I was
Um,
wondering where the next enterprise was going to be.
never say never. Yeah, so I'm trying to think about, the last, kind of the next chapter of my career. I won't say the last chapter, but I'm, thinking about the next chapter of my career. There's some goals that I want to reach at Google. I want to, I'd like to be a director. I'd like to manage a larger scope and do a lot more with diversity and inclusion in that scope, before I hang up my keyboard at Google. But yeah, absolutely. I'm actively thinking about the next stage of my career.
Very good. So if there are no other questions, I will close the forum. We good? Can we give Dr. Isler a hand, please, in our virtual way? Thank you.
Give a hand to you guys for the good questions. Thank you so much. It was so fun.
And let's keep in touch.
Absolutely. All right. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Have a good
Night. Thank you.
Enjoy your night.